Hey, what's up everybody? It's Christopher, aka the Bronze Age Nerd, and in today's video I want to talk about the current state of the HasLab series of projects. Real fast, if you're not familiar with HasLab, essentially it is almost like a Kickstarter. It's a project that is announced and has to hit a minimum number of backers that are willing to pay the initial cost to get into the base level of the project. And when you hit that level of backers, that next tier gets unlocked and you see what you've unlocked. So the reason this is kind of in the spotlight right now is sort of the fan reaction to the recent Star Wars The Black Series Rancor HasLab project. Fans got a little bit of an insight into what they can expect for this $350 Rancor that's going to come out. It's scaled for Star Wars The Black Series to recreate the Jabba's palace scene from Return of the Jedi. And people are, for the most part, less than thrilled, is maybe a nice way to put it, about what's happening with this particular HasLab. So I thought we could take a look at some of the HasLabs and kind of what's going on with them right now and what's happened in the past and see where we're going with HasLab and maybe kind of start a conversation about what HasLab should be. So HasLab has had kind of an interesting history. I believe it launched with the Jabba's sail barge, so going back to Star Wars, although this time in the vintage collection, not the Black Series. And that was a fairly successful campaign. You got a very nice $500 large scale Jabba's sail barge and a book that shipped before that as a backer reward. So they were off to a great start. But from there, we did discover that there are some issues. For example, there was a Cookie Monster HasLab project that was a terrible, terrible failure. It didn't even get close to reaching its backer reward goal. Another one that has to be talked about and comes to mind is the Transformers Unicron release, which barely passed, had to have its final end date extended. And then not only that, when it finally did ship, there were a lot of issues with the final quality of that figure. For one thing, it didn't really come with the quality you'd expect from the minifigures that were supposed to come with it. They were both much lower quality. Also, the paint apps weren't correct coloration for what the prototype showed, and sometimes that changes, but it was very disappointing. Plus, paint apps weren't applied to all the areas that they were supposed to be. Then you follow that up with a series of mostly successful HasLab projects. First of all, Hero Quest. I'm not very familiar with how that one went, but from what I can tell, it seems like people enjoyed it. There was also the Razor Crest, which was extremely successful. However, right on the heels of that project, the Razor Crest was destroyed in The Mandalorian Season 2, so that had some kind of bittersweet fruit that got delivered at the end as well. And then the final one in that trio there would be the Sentinel, which I have the most experience with because I actually backed the Sentinel. In fact, I'm supposed to receive my Sentinel within about 2 days, it looks like, of me recording this particular video, which is interesting. I'm actually apparently on the last wave of people that would be getting theirs. It seems like a lot of people got theirs already. So that's been frustrating, but hey, it looks like I'm going to get it. There were problems with a weak knee joint. There have been some fixes that were posted by the community, although not really addressed by Hasbro themselves, which is interesting. There's definitely been some DIYers and some figure modders and just some people that are willing to take apart their Sentinel that have kind of come up with some fixes though. So that seems to be mostly under control, which is nice. And it's worth mentioning that that one by far, from my knowledge at least, is the most successful HasLab project. It received like over 21,000 backers. I believe the goal was 5,000 or 6,000 that they had to reach. Of course, you are talking about a figure that for people with deep pockets is an army builder. People do sometimes want 2, 3, or many more Sentinels, and there's no doubt that several people, in fact, probably many backers, got multiples. I just stuck with one, which is enough for me and all I could afford, so I'm definitely excited to receive that figure. However, this brings us to some more recent issues with the HasLab projects, and there have been several others. There was Transformers did a Victory Saber figure. I'm not very familiar with that one or that character, to be honest. I didn't pay much attention to it. More recently, they've done a Proton Pack. It was Spengler's Proton Pack, kind of in anticipation and lining up with the Ghostbusters Afterlife premiere. And that has been, from what I can tell, widely positively received by Ghostbusters fans who've been looking for something like this for a while. So that's really cool. The other one that happened in between those was the Galactus Marvel Legends figure. And that one, people were really drawn to it. It's their largest Marvel Legends they've ever done by far, even larger than the Sentinel. However, the backer tiers did definitely leave something to be desired on that one, and a lot of people weren't super happy with the choices that they made for the unlock tiers. So now that we've played catch up a little bit, let's talk about where we're at currently with this Rancor HasLab project. So this one is definitely one that started out strong. People seemed pretty excited. We had prototype grayscale figure renders of this figure. I didn't really pay much attention to it. It's not something that I was ever going to buy into at $350, but I could definitely see a lot of hardcore fans being interested. There were a lot of comments about the price. But now with the latest details revealed about what's going on with this particular HasLab project, you have fans backing out of this project. And I mean a lot of fans. The numbers have really dropped. Well, why are they doing that? What's causing people to pump the brakes on this? So basically, we're talking about a $350 figure. And now that we've seen the prototype paint applications for this figure, it looks like a much cheaper toy. I saw comparisons on the subreddit for Star Wars The Black Series to, much cheaper toys. People were talking about, expecting more from the paint apps for a figure of this size and especially for this price. The other comments that I've seen, I noticed somebody noticed that there was a crack along one of the spine fins or protrusions that's along the Rancor spine. There was a crack in that softer plastic already. And now it is a prototype, so maybe that's something they'd fix in final production, but that's alarming to see for sure. Especially when you're talking about some of the quality control issues they've had with Unicron, with the Sentinel and the knee joints. So that definitely is something that should be mentioned. But what really got people's attention here is some of these backer unlocks. Fans are going to get a cardboard diorama, which anytime you talk about a cardboard diorama and it comes to action figures, it just evokes images of that G.I. Joe headquarters that came out in the 80s. It was just a piece of cardboard, stuff like that. It just seems cheap, especially in something that's this pricey for one figure that's not even really that big in the grand scheme of things. Then you got some really cheap looking skulls for decoration in the diorama, which that's something that probably should have been included at the base level, not an unlocked tier. Then on top of that, you got Salacious Crumb, a notoriously tiny figure. Now it's a cool figure, but again, this is something that probably should have been offered at the base unlocked tier or been brought to you with a corresponding figure, like say maybe Jabba the Hutt would make a lot of sense, for example, in this particular set. So, or a lot of other figures. The Handler would make perfect sense to include, right? Or for that matter, Ula would make tons of sense to include as well. So there's just some baffling choices that were made here. And then you get to the final unlocked tier and you get Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is the most overused figure in all of Star Wars Black Series, which makes sense, of course, if you really think about it, because he's the most important hero in all of Star Wars. So that's not necessarily surprising, but it's kind of like, Marvel Legends fans get a little tired of seeing Wolverine. It's just something that happens with action figures where you get tons and tons of the same figure. And to make matters worse, all these figures that are coming with this Rancor HasLab or projected to come with it, if it even gets backed, are repacks. So that's just definitely something that's very unfortunate. And I can see why fans are upset, and I can see why they're leaving this particular HasLab project, which at the time of this recording has dropped well below 5,000 backers, which is a number that it had hit at one point. I haven't been following the numbers too close, but it's definitely gone down. And at this point where we're at in that particular project, there's a really good chance that this thing is not going to hit its backers unless they throw in a lot more stuff, or they extend it. It just is not looking good. And I think the pressing point here for Star Wars Black Series fans is now there's a real concern. Is this going to be something that's going to affect whether or not future Star Wars Black Series projects get added? does it mean that Hasbro now has lost confidence in this particular, because Hasbro has a history of doing this where they've gotten better at it recently. So I have to give them some credit, but they just have a history of misreading what the fans want. And I admit, the last year, it feels like they've definitely responded. A lot of issues with, like, say, G.I. Joe, the Classified series, it seems like those have been at least acknowledged or worked on. A lot of the frustrations about store exclusives have been somewhat alleviated, which it just is a sign that they're listening. So I do appreciate that. But at the core, this is something that I think fans have a real reason to be concerned about, whether or not Hasbro is going to correctly read what people's issues are with this project. I hope they hear the message loud and clear from those fans that are saying that it's about the price, it's about the paint, it's about the pack-ins and the unlock tiers, more than it is the project itself, which a lot of people were kind of watching closely and anticipating. So this isn't just about the Rancor, though, even though that's obviously a hot topic right now. For example, I'm a giant G.I. Joe fan. I love G.I. Joe. I was so excited to see the news and the announcement about the Skystriker HasLab project. I was absolutely over the moon. And it's doing a little bit better. It has kind of plateaued a little bit still, but it's not losing backers or anything like that at a high rate anyway. But the problem is, for me, I won't back that project. It's $250 for a Skystriker, which to me is just, why isn't there just a retro collection release of this vehicle playset? And yeah, you could make it a more premium playset. I could even see them getting up to $100, $125 with something that's pretty cool and staying in that original mold size. This is supposedly a larger Skystriker, but they've been a little fuzzy on the details for the dimensions from everything I can see, including an insider who got to do a little photo shoot with the prototype, and they put it next to some old original generation Skystrikers. And even that photo was a little misleading because the prototype Skystriker had its wings, it's basically an F-14 Tomcat. It had its wings folded out, and it was in front of the other Skystrikers at an angle. So it was very hard to see the actual one-to-one size comparison. And that doesn't help. It's like, sell this thing, show us what we really need to be doing. They are bringing back some O-ring figures. There's a lot of excitement there. I don't want to, pump the brakes on any of that excitement. However, it's still something that I look at that and see $250 price tag, and I just go, well, I'm never going to buy that. That's just not something I can support, no matter what they're throwing into it, because it's just not worth it. And that's very much my personal opinion. I know a lot of people that are buying multiples of these and they're going to fleet build them. That's totally cool. But to me, $250 is just too much to ask for that. On top of all this, you have international fans, which have repeatedly been kicked in the teeth when it comes to the HasLab projects. They've had to go through third-party websites. They've had to go through eBay to acquire these items, and they've had to pay a premium for it. They did, open a HasLab UK site, but that doesn't help everybody. Obviously, that's a very limited use case. It's just one of these things where I look at this over and over again, and I'm kind of scratching my head. It's like we've had a lot of great steps forward with this, but also several stumbling blocks. So let's see if Hasbro can figure this out. Let's see where they go next. I'm curious your guys' thoughts on what's happening with these projects, particularly the Skystriker and the Rancor. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about these projects and what you think. To me, I think they're overpriced. I think a lot of people would agree with that. These are obviously targeted at premium collectors, and I think that's exactly what they are. But then again, if you're targeting it at premium collectors, you have to deliver premium quality. Thank you for watching and listening to this video. I do appreciate everybody doing that. If you want to comment and share this video, that really helps out the channel, and I do appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, there is a link to my Ko-fi in the description below. Also, you can join us on Discord and join the conversation there as well. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I want to remind you, as always, hey, 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 hey. Read comics every day.